Hi friends. I imagine by now you probably know that for the past several months, United Methodist Temple has been undergoing a very serious, a very intentional, and a very important discernment process. A process of discovery, of looking into who we are and especially who we can become. This process has the potential to reshape how we function as a church. It will realign our efforts, our intentions, our purpose, and our resources so that we can reach out to a new generation longing to experience Christ. And of course, through all of it, it has the potential to reinvigorate our faith, our passion, and our unity as a body of Christ here in Beckley. The Discernment Team was created with a simple purpose: to look into who we are, how we do things, how effective are we in reaching our goals, to take an honest, unabashed look at current reality. I believe that our Breakthrough Prayer Initiative that we began several months ago has been a key part of opening us up to this possibility. It's been God guiding us through prayer, through discernment, through seeking His will that allows us to get to this place. It's been a learning experience for all of us. Those on the Discernment Team have been praying for one another. They've been reading and experiencing new ways of doing church. They've been looking at who we are and how we got here. It certainly has been a learning experience, and it has been an opportunity for us to see the future as it really can be. We know that God is ready, willing, and able to do a new thing. Easter proves that to us. The question that we're asking is, are we ready to do a new thing? Our process has certainly been challenging, and at times it has been messy. Change always is. It has been a reflection on who are we. It has been a time of deep soul searching, asking the question, who are we trying to be? Where do we want to go? And of course, it has been an honest time of honest conversation with you, the members of United Methodist Temple. As a matter of fact, I remember just several weeks ago that we had an open luncheon after church. People gathered around to hear the possibilities and what trials that we are facing. When one small boy raised his hand and asked a very powerful question. Where is everybody, he asked, and why are they leaving Temple? Wow, that was a good question. I'm sure it was something all of us have been thinking and wondering about, and it took a small boy to raise his hand and ask what everybody else was thinking. Well, their journey finally led to a decision about changing how we function as a church. It's been a time of discernment, of prayer, of talking to every group that we have in the church and seeking your input and your guidance. All of their work culminated in a proposal that was made to Church Council on August 15th. Council approved their recommendation and moved to a church-wide vote on September 6th, a church conference. The decision was overwhelming. 40 people voted for the change with no dissents. But now it is time for us to roll up our sleeves. During this process, I have intentionally tried to take a back seat. I've tried to be sort of a coach on the sideline, guiding the conversation, encouraging people, praying for them, encouraging them to seek deeper answers and look for experts, guiding the process rather than being out front as the spokesperson. My intention was not to be the person that was out front, thinking that this was another wild hair that the pastor had come up with, that somehow the pastor was trying to consolidate power in a small group all of his own, that somehow we were trying to sway the church, either to the left or to the right. Church, I want you to hear me clearly. There is no conspiracy here. Nothing further could be from the truth. The purpose of this process has simply been to discern what is in the best interest of Temple for its long-term vitality and for its long-term health. We need you to step into that gap. But I also felt that now was the time for me to share my perspective. How did we get here? Why are we here? Why is this all necessary? Why are we taking this bold, some would say even foolhardy approach to what comes next? We need to be aggressive. We need to change the way that we're doing things. I have a couple of first ideas that I have three ideas that I'd like to share with you why this is important at this time. The first one is because of Temple's heritage of leadership. Temple has a long, rich history of leadership in this community, in the West Virginia Annual Conference, and around the state. Your leadership abilities, your ability to do what nobody else thinks can be done, is legendary. What happens at Temple resonates in ways that you cannot fully imagine. Just recently, we celebrated the 40th anniversary of the building of this facility. Even that courage to leave the central part of Beckley and move out here to the fringe took serious leadership. It took vision, it took a passion, and we are the beneficiaries of their decision. It is now time for us to step up. It is now time for us to exercise our leadership, to redefine who we are and who we can become. It is no longer just about sitting here and being comfortable in our place. We now need your leadership, but we need a different kind of leadership. We need adaptive leadership. When I was growing up as a kid, you showed up on Sunday morning, you went home, and that was about it. Well, now we have emails, we have texts, we have webinars, we have live streaming. We have a digital world that is infiltrating and changing the way people perceive of ministry. We need what is known as adaptive leadership. We need people to come together and ask deeper questions. Are we doing what we think we're doing? Are we getting the results that we anticipate? Why are we doing what we're doing? And more importantly, why are we not doing what we should be doing? Well, that's an interesting question, isn't it? It's something that invites us to go even deeper. Our faith is under threat. We need a new generation to step forward. We need to speak in a language this culture can understand. We need to lay the groundwork for those that will come after, to set the stage for what is probably inevitable. We need your leadership. The second reason is probably the most obvious. We must face the truth. Numbers don't lie, and the numbers have been telling us that we're probably not doing really well. Daniel Patrick Moynihan once said, "You are certainly entitled to your own opinion, but you are not entitled to your own facts." The numbers have been telling us things are not healthy. Attendance has been dropping dramatically, and these are not just numbers. We often tend to disregard numbers as being too secular. But these numbers are people. They're friends and neighbors that used to worship here and used to call Temple home, but are no longer here. Where did they go? And more importantly, why did they go? We need to be about making disciples for Jesus Christ. That's why we exist. So how are we doing? The numbers tell us how we're doing in our culture and in our community. Consider it like seeing the oil light on your dashboard. When that light begins to be blinking red, you ignore that warning at your own peril. The numbers have been warning us for some time that something has got to change. And of course, change is scary. People often don't like to look at the numbers. They don't want to be considered a Chicken Little. They don't want to be sending out warning signs. Most people just want to go home and forget about it. But we all know it. We see it. We feel it. We know that something has changed. Our system is just not able to adapt to it, to face the facts. Denial about the facts doesn't change the truth of the facts. So let's take a look at some of the numbers. I went back and looked at the numbers of average attendance here at Temple for the past 33 years. Every year in January, we submit a statistical report. How many people are in Sunday school? How many people are in worship? So let's go back all the way to 1990. When you look at the average attendance as reported by you, the members of Temple, we find that from 1990 to about 2010, The average attendance was about 350. It bounced around up and down a little here, less there, but generally it averaged about 350. A very good, very healthy, very vital community of faith. And then in 2010, something strange began to happen. The church began to grow, and it grew rapidly, dramatically. It went from 350 in 2010 to over 750 by 2015. Think about that. In 5 years, you more than doubled. You had phenomenal growth. People were coming in droves. I've heard stories of people driving buses. There was no parking. People were showing up and loving it. Well, for the most part, anyway. Soon after all of those numbers, there were baptisms, there were discipling classes. People were getting connected to Christ. But then something happened again. Around 2015, until the present, it began to decline. It began to decline at a steady rate. Over the past 7 years, you went from an average of 750 to where we are today, which is about 140 to 130. That's an 86% decline in 7 years. Now, this is not COVID because the decline preceded the arrival of COVID in about 2021. Over those years, the numbers were telling us, the warning signs were blaring, and yet we were not particularly able to face the truth, the reality that something has shifted significantly. The numbers don't lie. They're telling us that we have to change. We can no longer debate whether we should or could because change is upon us. We no longer have the time. What the numbers tell us is that if we remain doing exactly what we've been doing and expecting different results, that's probably not going to be a winning strategy. We can no longer sit back and wait and wonder what will happen next. It's time that we change. But I think we can, because I believe that we were made for more. I believe that God is not done with us yet, and that sometimes in our darkest moments, it's when God does his best work. And finally, I believe that we need to consider alternatives because we must begin to reimagine what the church really is. You know, all churches have a life cycle. They begin by a launch, and as they launch, they have great energy and great vitality. They have this vision for what could be and maybe what should be. And like-minded people gravitate to that because they see this vitality of a vision, a mission that drives all decisions. As the church continues to grow, people reach out. They're drawn to this energy and this vitality. And it's all about relationships, about connecting with friends and family, allowing them to come together and experience what you've experienced, what you know to be true. As people begin to come together, eventually over time, they reach a plateau, a stability of both relationships connected to the mission and the vision. But as that continues, oftentimes churches will slide into the program phase where people come as consumers. They want goods and services. They want programs. They want children's ministries. They want things for themselves. They go where they are pleased. And pretty soon, the church's mission begins to get hijacked into making people happy, pleasing the inside crowd instead of focusing on the outside. Eventually, those programs eventually become into preserving the hard-fought gains that the church has made, fighting for its future. It enters a preservation and a maintenance phase. And if left unaddressed, eventually it will slide into life support and decline. Now, the discernment team got together and I invited them to take an assessment. that will look at all of our processes and programs and things that are happening around here at Temple, what they know to be true. And it kind of plots, where do you think we are on the life cycle of a church? Where do you think we are? And invited them to take this assessment. There were 9 people at the time that took this initial, very simple assessment. And I invite you to do the same. At this point, I would invite you to pause the video, go to the website that is listed. There is also a YouTube video that you can check out that describes the life cycle of a church. At the bottom, there is a very simple assessment that would give you some idea of where you think we are as a church in the life cycle. Now, going back to the discernment team, I invited them to take this assessment. And when we compiled all of their results, everybody agreed that we as Temple are probably on life support. Now, what that means is that we can no longer wait. We can no longer just hope that things get better. We can no longer close our eyes or hide in the sand. We must respond. It means that if we keep doing what we have been doing, just kind of going through the motions, eventually nature will take its course. We do not have a lot of time to just debate and bicker and be bitter about how we got here. We must roll up our sleeves and do what other people say cannot be done. But here's the good news. The only reason that this is at all bad is if we choose to do nothing. The good news is that we have an opportunity to change things, to reimagine what the church could be and what it was originally designed to be. We can be proactive instead of just reactive. We can begin looking at what's going on in our church, and we can get back to some basics. We believe that we can because our leadership structure reminds us that it is time for action. Remember the passage from James chapter 2, verse 26? Faith without action is dead. Our current leadership model, what we call the committee system, is really sort of like a black hole for creativity and passion. People have great ideas, ways they want to connect to other people, and it runs through a committee system to kind of take all the highs and the lows out and leave us with just the middle ground. Our organizational structure is based on what is known as a wheel and spoke model, that we have a central hub that drives everything. It is the board. It has fiduciary responsibility. It has responsibilities for the structure and for the direction of the church, but it farms out the trustees, finance, staffing, and leadership development to the sides. And all of them are in silos. They don't exactly talk all the time, and it's really hard to get them all in the same room. The structure was designed for when things were going well. When I was a kid, on Sunday morning, church is what you did. That's where people went. And so when the church's doors were open, people just flooded in. When people are coming in naturally, the committee system is designed to keep everything running smoothly, keep all of the parts oiled, getting everything taken care of, and helping people work together harmoniously, getting everybody on board. But when change is coming so fast and so furious that you have to react very quickly, that committee system is just not able to address all of the things that are going on. And so we have to begin to look at a new system. We began to look at what is known as the Simplified Accountable Structure. It takes all of those committees that are just about maintaining the structure of the church, the interior administration of the church, before you ever talk about doing ministry on the outside. Do you realize, I did a search just the other day, and in 2022, which was just last year, when we had charge conference, we had to elect 70 individuals to fill all of the committee slots that we have just to maintain the organization. But if you remember, I said we're averaging right now about 130 to 140 on Sunday morning. That means that half of all of our people are serving as just to maintain the structure, the administrative part of the church. And some people are serving in 2 capacities and some in 3, just to keep the things going. Before you ever get to the place of doing ministry that is actually connecting people into the life of Christ. As a result, nominations under the old system was about begging, pleading, and bartering. Sometimes we were just looking for a warm body, and oftentimes we were even flexible about that one. The church should never be a beggar. We should never make a beggar out of Jesus, about the opportunity. So I invited the nominations committee, the leadership development team, to look at this completely different. What are those leadership standards that we would expect for anybody to be a solid leadership? I've listed them here on this page so that you can take a look. I've also included their document at the end. And I invite you to think about whether you would be able to be a leader of a church or whether you should be a leader of a church. Because it's all about authenticity, about truly being a representative disciple that Jesus wants for us. But I also find that as we go through this, we're asking the question, are we being effective? And so the nominations has been doing some really good, solid, hard work. We need a new generation of leaders, people that will step up, that will look for the good of the whole, but do it with a sense of respect, a sense of authenticity, where people can say, I may disagree with you, but I will never question your heart. I know that you love us and you love the church deeply. Now, the wheel and spoke model, the committee system that we have now, has been employed since back in the 50s when we were just trying to keep the system running. But it has a couple of flaws with it. The first one is that it confuses activity, meetings, and busyness with ministry. It assumes that if we're busy, we're showing up every week, we're sitting through committee systems, that we must be doing good. Somebody once said it's like somebody planning for a Sunday school lesson. They sit together, they plan, but they never actually employ it. They never actually bring it to life. We do a lot of planning, we do a lot of scheduling, but we're not doing as well in our ministry and our outreach. I also think that it consumes a tremendous amount of energy. We have people that are attending meetings every week. They're getting burned out. And so when we start inviting them to be a part of a VBS or an outreach program or a reading program here at church for the kids, they're just exhausted. They don't have the energy anymore. And pretty soon they start thinking that a committee is ministry, that it is serving and reaching new people. And finally, it confuses and it assumes that meetings and planning are the mission of the church. We're no longer interested in reaching new people, of having new visitors, or of connecting with people in a new way. We're interested in doing more doing more meetings. The Simplified Accountable Structure is intended to align our efforts, get everybody going in the same direction, getting all of those horses pulling in the same direction. It's intended to be effective. Are we doing what we think we're doing? And it's intended to be adaptive, to look at the world and be able to flex, to be able to move as conditions change. So as we began this process, I wanted to give you a sense of what we could be. That vision for the future, I think we should be pursuing. Last year, I shared a vision, an idea, a concept, if you will, of where we could go if we could all pull together. The first thing that I wanted to be is I wanted to be a part of a church that people wanted to share with friends. That on a Sunday morning, people would say, I don't want to miss my church. I would not miss my church for the world, which is what Jesus is inviting us to do. Whenever people come from out of town, they want to share what they do here, the friends and their family, because this is the central part of their identity. I want to be a part of a church that is so alive and so excited by what Jesus is doing that they wouldn't miss for anything. I also want to be a part of a church that brings out the best in others. I want to be a place that cultivates faith journeys. Now, we're not all on the same path. We're not all at the same place in our journey, but we all are working to get there. We can learn from one another. We can build relationships, family life. We do life together because Jesus is bringing the best out in all of us. Because we believe, right, deep down inside, we're Easter people in a Good Friday world. That our goal is to not just believe in Jesus, but to believe like Jesus, so that we'll do what Jesus did for the reasons that he did them. That takes time, intentionality, and integrity to do what we'll say we'll do. And finally, I want to be a part of a church that has a catalytic impact on its world. That wherever Temple people go, whatever they're involved with, whoever they see, they make their life better. They inspire people. They help people see the divine spark in everyone. Everyone is a child of God. That we can learn to live despite all of the divisions that are swirling around. That we make this a priority because we believe in it. I believe that we can and we should live out this new life. But it's going to require a lot of hard work. And although we talked a lot about the single board, the single accountable system, the single accountable system does have its flaws. Ta-da, there you are. You said, I knew it. Well, one of the greatest flaws, one of the things that we have to understand is that it is not a silver bullet. Please hear me. The hard work lies ahead. All that the single board does is it creates an environment for serious people to ask some very hard questions with people that they trust, and then have the authority and the courage of their convictions to live them out. We're not going to change on our own. We're going to stay exactly where we want. We need leaders that will help motivate us, inspire us, make it safe for us to take the next step. Now, the board will still have responsibility for the finances. They will continue to work through our treasurer, Martha Hutchinson, through our financial secretary, Fran Miller. It will allow them to look at the finances, but ask now the deep questions. What are the finances telling us about the health and vitality of our church? They'll still be working through a maintenance team that will get into things like the plumbing, the HVAC, the electrical systems, everything that it takes to run this place. But they'll take a higher level view. Given all that we have, these wonderful, amazing assets, this building and facility and property, what are we doing to change people's lives? How are we using these facilities and maximizing their impact? Now, even though we're going from 70 people right now to 61, those 61 do not get to take a vacation. We're anticipating that you'll still be involved. It still depends on you. You need to get involved in a Bible study, a program. Allow this place to become central in your life. Volunteer for our children's ministry. Volunteer for our missions program. Volunteer to reach out to communities in a way that you never imagined before. The single board model is not going to change things overnight. It's going to be some hard work. And the nominations team has been doing work overtime to select people that will inspire and motivate all of us. Their work is really impressive. I know that you appreciate their work, and so do I. But if we're ever going to turn the corner, if we're going to stem the tide, if we're going to bring back new life and vitality to this place, it must begin now. We must begin to adapt to the realities. The single board model is merely the first step. In order for us to be all that God created, we have to get into the boat. We have to push out into deep water, because it's out in the deep where we're at our most vulnerable, that God does his best work. Now, I know this journey is going to make some of you seasick. It's going to make some of you fearful and clinging to the sides. And some of you are going to want to go back to the land. But God is inviting us to do a new thing. So let me ask you, if God invites you to the boat, but there are storm clouds on the horizon, would you get in? If God invites you to go across a lake that you've never been to before, and the waves are choppy and the sea is white-capped, would you still get in and set your sails for the horizon? When you don't know where you're going, and you don't know how you're going to get there, would you still get in the boat? And then, when you're in the middle of the storm and things are raging around you, and Jesus says, get out of the boat, would you even dare to try? Well, that's the question, isn't it? That's what we need to ask. Will we get out of the boat? A couple of months ago when I first got here, I did a Bible study. I did a study on 1 Kings 19. It's the story of Elijah who was just despondent. He was ready to check out and give up. As a matter of fact, he said to God, take my life. I'm suicidal. I'm done. I can't take anymore. I just want to quit. And God was compassionate. He sent some angels to feed Elijah and led him to a cave to get some rest. And after he was rested, God confronted him. He said, Elijah, what's wrong? He said, look at the world around us. It's going to hell in a handbasket. And he said, you don't really understand the whole plan I have, do you? He said, Elijah, I have 7,000 that have never bowed a knee and never will. I have 7,000 that have rolled up their sleeves instead of being rolled over. I have 7,000 that are rising and shining in the darkness. It's time, Elijah, that you join my story, not the other way around. We are the remnant. We are those that God have chosen for this time. In the book of Esther, when Esther was very afraid and did not want to go into the king, her uncle Mordecai said to you, Esther, how do you know that you were not born for a time such as this? This is your time. This is the time that disciples rise and shine. This is the time that disciples do what others cannot because they have faith in Easter, that God is not done with us yet, and that resurrection is in our DNA. Are you ready to join? Do you believe in the adventure? Do you believe that God is doing a new thing? Are you ready to explore the unknown future together? Are you ready to face the greatest challenge of your lifetime? You know, for future generations hope that you are, and so do I. Friends, the single board model will help us. It will not solve our problems because that lies with us. Our depth of compassion, our depth of trust, and our willingness to work together. Are you ready to roll up your sleeves and do what others say can't be done? I certainly hope so. Come on, let's go get started.